The revelation about the Valen's troubled past sent shockwaves through both Earth and Epsilon 7 for humanity. It was a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked greed and environmental neglect. For the Valens, it was an uncomfortable reckoning, a moment when their carefully guarded history was laid bare for all to see. The fragile trust that had been built between the two species now hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of collapse. Ethan Cole and Claire Bennett knew they had crossed a line by uncovering and sharing the truth. Though their intentions had been noble to warn humanity of the dangers ahead, the fallout was undeniable. Protests erupted worldwide, with voices on both sides growing louder. Some argued that the Valens were hypocrites, pointing to their own environmental failures as evidence that they couldn't be trusted. Others saw the disclosure as a gift, a chance for humanity to learn from the mistakes of its cosmic kin. Amid the chaos, Ethan and Claire struggled to hold the alliance together, knowing that failure could mean losing the greatest opportunity for growth humanity had ever known. On Epsilon 7, Aaron called for an emergency meeting with the Valen Council. The chamber where they gathered was dimly lit, its walls adorned with glowing crystals that pulsed faintly, casting shifting patterns of light across the room. The mood was somber, each member weighed down by the weight of what had been revealed. Aaron stood at the center, her expression calm but resolute. "We cannot undo what has been done," she began, addressing the council. "But we can decide how we move forward. Humanity knows our flaws now. They know we are not perfect. Perhaps this is a chance not just for them, but for us to confront the shadows of our past and emerge stronger." Her words sparked heated debate among the council members. Some argued that humanity's reaction proved they weren't ready for the responsibility of shared knowledge. Others believed that transparency, though painful, was necessary if the two species were to truly unite. After hours of deliberation, a consensus emerged. The Valens would open their archives completely, allowing humanity unrestricted access to their history. It was a bold and risky move, but one born of hope rather than fear. When Ethan and Claire received word of the decision, they were astonished. "They're trusting us again," Claire said softly, her voice tinged with awe. "Even after everything." "They're taking a risk," Ethan replied, his brow furrowed. "One we can't afford to waste." With permission granted, teams of researchers from Earth traveled to Epsilon 7 to sift through the newly available records. What they found painted a fuller picture of the Valen's journey, a story of resilience, sacrifice, and redemption. The data revealed that after the Great Collapse, the Valens had implemented radical changes to their society. They abandoned hierarchical structures in favor of collective decision-making, prioritizing sustainability over profit. Education became central to their culture, teaching future generations the importance of living in harmony with their environment. But the records also highlighted the cost of those changes. Entire communities had perished during the transition, unable to adapt to the new way of life. Conflicts had erupted as factions resisted reform, leading to years of strife before stability was achieved. The Valens had endured immense suffering, yet they had persevered, driven by the belief that they owed it to their ancestors and to any descendants who might follow to leave behind a better world. As these details emerged, public opinion on Earth began to shift. People started to see the Valens not as villains or saviors, but as mirrors reflecting humanity's potential for both destruction and renewal. The parallels between the two species' histories were impossible to ignore. Just like the Valens, humanity stood at a crossroads. The choices made in the coming years would determine whether Earth followed the same path of ruin or forged a new destiny. Governments around the globe scrambled to respond to the revelations. Task forces were formed to address climate change, resource management, and social inequality. Policies once dismissed as too ambitious or impractical suddenly gained traction. Renewable energy initiatives expanded rapidly, funded by unprecedented international cooperation. Corporations faced stricter regulations, forcing them to prioritize sustainability over short-term profits. Activists hailed the changes as a turning point, while critics warned of economic disruption and job losses. Amid the whirlwind of activity, Ethan and Claire continued to serve as bridges between Earth and Epsilon 7. They worked closely with Aaron and other Valen leaders, offering guidance based on the lessons learned from studying the archives. Together, they developed strategies to help humanity avoid repeating the Valen's mistakes. These efforts weren't without challenges. Resistance remained strong in certain quarters, particularly among industries reliant on fossil fuels and outdated practices. Yet, progress was undeniable. One of the most significant breakthroughs came in the form of a global summit held in Geneva. Representatives from every nation gathered alongside Valen delegates to discuss the future of Earth-Valen relations. The atmosphere was tense at first, with old grievances threatening to derail negotiations. But as discussions unfolded, a sense of shared purpose began to emerge. Leaders acknowledged that the survival of both species depended on collaboration, not competition. During the summit, Ethan delivered a speech that resonated deeply with attendees. Standing before a packed auditorium, he spoke plainly, his words carrying the weight of conviction. "We've spent centuries looking outward, searching for answers in the stars. Now we have them not in the form of gods or saviors, but in the form of neighbors who share our struggles and our dreams. The Valens didn't come to save us. They came to remind us of who we are and who we can become." His words earned a standing ovation, breaking down barriers that had seemed insurmountable. Just days earlier, by the end of the summit, agreements had been reached on key issues, including joint research projects, technology transfers, and cultural exchange programs. Most importantly, a framework was established to ensure ongoing dialogue and cooperation between Earth and Epsilon 7. Despite these successes, doubts lingered. Not everyone believed the alliance would last. Skeptics pointed to humanity's history of broken promises and failed reforms, arguing that the same patterns would inevitably reassert themselves. Even within the Valen community, there were whispers of concern. Some worried that humanity's volatility made it an unreliable partner, while others feared that exposing too much of their history might lead to exploitation. Aaron addressed these fears during a private conversation with Ethan and Claire. "Trust is a fragile thing," she said, her gaze steady. "It must be nurtured, protected, but it is also a powerful force. When two people or two species choose to trust each other despite their differences, they create something greater than themselves." Her words stayed with Ethan and Claire long after the meeting ended. They understood the enormity of the task ahead, but they also recognized the opportunity it presented. For the first time in human history, the stakes extended beyond Earth. The decisions made today would shape not only humanity's future, but the fate of two interconnected worlds. Back on Earth, the impact of the revelations continued to unfold. Schools updated their curricula to include lessons about the Valen's history, emphasizing the importance of learning from the past. Artists and writers drew inspiration from the shared narrative, creating works that celebrated resilience and unity. Scientists collaborated with Valen counterparts to develop solutions for pressing global issues, from food insecurity to rising sea levels. Yet, challenges persisted. Economic disparities widened as industries adapted to new regulations, leaving some communities struggling to keep up. Political tensions flared in regions resistant to change, with protests often turning violent. Extremist groups seized on the unrest, spreading fear and misinformation to undermine the alliance. Through it all, Ethan and Claire remained steadfast, traveling tirelessly to promote understanding and cooperation. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings, Claire sat beside Ethan in a quiet park. The sun had set, leaving the sky streaked with hues of orange and purple. Children played nearby, their laughter echoing in the cool air. Claire sighed, leaning back on the bench. "Do you think we're making a difference?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Ethan glanced at her, then at the horizon where the last rays of sunlight faded into darkness. "I think we're planting seeds," he said finally. "Some will take root, others won't. But even if only a few grow, it'll be worth it." Claire nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at her lips. Maybe that's enough. As they sat, in silence, watching the stars begin to appear, a sense of peace settled over them. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with obstacles and unknowns, but for the first time, Ethan and Claire allowed themselves to believe that humanity wasn't alone in its journey. With the Valens as allies and, as near as they had a chance to rewrite their story, to build a future rooted in hope rather than fear. Above them, the vast expanse of the cosmos stretched endlessly, a reminder of the infinite possibilities, waiting to be explored. And somewhere out there, among the countless stars, lay the promise of a brighter tomorrow for Earth. For Epsilon 7, and for all who dared to dream. Back on Earth, the revelation that the Valens looked human sparked a frenzy of scientific investigation. Laboratories around the world buzzed with activity as researchers worked to understand how two species from vastly different planets could share such striking similarities. Ethan Cole and Claire Bennett were at the center of this effort, leading a team of geneticists, biologists, and anthropologists in analyzing samples provided by the Valens during their initial meetings. The results were astonishing. Genetic tests revealed that the Valens' DNA matched human DNA almost identically. The differences were minor teeny variations in certain sequences, but overall, the two species were nearly indistinguishable on a molecular level. This discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. It wasn't just physical appearance or behavior. The very building blocks of life were the same. At first, theories abounded. Some suggested panspermia, the idea that life had spread across the universe via comets or meteorites carrying microbial organisms. Others proposed parallel evolution, arguing that similar environments led to similar outcomes. But neither explanation fully accounted for the depth of the connection between humans and Valens. Something more profound was at play. Ethan and Claire found themselves drawn deeper into the mystery. They spent long hours poring over data, comparing notes, and debating possibilities. One evening, while reviewing ancient astronomical records, Claire stumbled upon something intriguing. References to a distant star system that matched the coordinates Aaron had mentioned during their earlier discussions. According to Valen lore, this system known as Solara Prime was the cradle of their civilization. Could it also be humanity's origin? Excited by the possibility, Ethan and Claire decided to return to Epsilon 7 to investigate further. With permission from Commander Hayes and support from both Earth's governments and the Valens, they boarded Odyssey 1 once again. This time, however, their mission was personal. They weren't diplomats or representatives. They were seekers of truth, driven by a desire to uncover the shared history of their species. When they arrived on Epsilon 7, Aaron greeted them warmly. She seemed unsurprised by their questions, as if she had anticipated them all along. "You seek answers about our past," she said, her tone gentle but tinged with sadness. "Come, let me show you." She led them to a vast underground archive, hidden beneath the settlement. The chamber was enormous, filled with rows of glowing crystals embedded in walls of smooth stone. Each crystal contained centuries' worth of knowledge, histories, philosophies, scientific breakthroughs, preserved in a form accessible only to those who understood the technology. Aaron handed Ethan and Claire devices resembling headsets, explaining that they would allow them to access the information stored within the crystals. As they activated the devices, waves of images and sounds flooded their minds. They saw glimpses of a planet bathed in golden sunlight, its landscapes teeming with life. Forests stretched endlessly, rivers sparkled like jewels, and cities rose gracefully from the ground. People moved freely, laughing and working together in harmony. It was paradise, or so it seemed. But then the vision shifted. Dark clouds gathered overhead, storms raged, and fires consumed entire regions. Battles erupted, weapons clashed, and blood stained the land. The once thriving civilization fell into ruin, leaving behind only ruins and ash. Through it all, a single phrase echoed repeatedly: "We are one." Ethan and Claire removed the headsets, shaken by what they had witnessed. "What happened?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. "Why did your people destroy their home?" Erin sighed deeply, her expression heavy with sorrow. "It was not just my people," she replied. "It was our ancestors, yours and mine. We lived together on Solara Prime, united by our shared origins. But over time, divisions grew. Greed, fear, and hatred tore us apart. War consumed the planet until nothing remained but desolation. Those who survived fled, scattering across the stars. My people came here, to Epsilon 7, yours. Well, you know the rest." Claire stared at her, struggling to process the implications. Humanity's history, its wars, conflicts, and struggles wasn't unique. It was part of a larger narrative, a cycle of destruction and renewal. And now, after millennia of separation, the descendants of those survivors had found each other again. The weight of this realization settled heavily on Ethan and Claire. They had come seeking answers, but what they found was far greater than they had imagined. Humanity and the Valens weren't just neighbors in the cosmos. They were family, bound by tragedy and hope. Determined to share this knowledge with the rest of humanity, Ethan and Claire requested copies of the archival data. Erin agreed, though she warned them of the challenges ahead. "Not everyone will welcome the truth," she cautioned. "Some may see it as a threat to their beliefs or way of life. You must tread carefully." Returning to Earth, Ethan and Claire prepared to present their findings to the world. They knew the task wouldn't be easy. The information they carried challenged fundamental ideas about identity, religion, and history. For some, it would bring enlightenment and unity. For others, it would provoke fear and resistance. Their first presentation took place at a global summit attended by leaders from every nation. As Ethan stood before the assembly, he felt the eyes of the world upon him. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. "For centuries, we have looked to the stars and wondered if we are alone. Today, we know the answer. We are not. But what we've discovered goes beyond mere contact. The Valens are not strangers, they are our kin. Our histories are intertwined, forged in the crucible of a shared past." He paused, letting the words sink in. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as people processed the implications. Then Claire stepped forward, holding up a holographic projection of the ruined city from the archives. "This is Solara Prime," she explained. "Our ancestral home, a place of beauty and promise, destroyed by our own hands. The Valens have shown us this truth not to shame us, but to remind us of what we can become if we choose a different path." Her voice softened as she continued. "We stand at a crossroads. We can cling to our divisions, repeating the mistakes of our ancestors, or we can embrace the lessons of the past. The choice is ours." The room fell silent, the gravity of the moment palpable. Slowly, applause began to build, spreading throughout the hall. Not everyone was convinced, some remained skeptical or outright hostile, but many recognized the significance of what had been revealed. Humanity had been given a second chance, an opportunity to rewrite its story. In the weeks that followed, reactions varied widely. Religious groups grappled with the implications for their beliefs, while scientists marveled at the new avenues of research opened by the discovery. Politicians debated policies to address the revelations, balancing calls for unity with concerns about social unrest. Meanwhile, ordinary people engaged in conversations around dinner tables and coffee shops, sharing thoughts and fears about what it meant to be connected to another species. Amidst the turmoil, cultural exchanges between Earth and the Valens gained momentum. Artifacts, music, literature, and technology flowed freely between worlds, fostering understanding and collaboration. Schools incorporated lessons about the Valens into their curricula, teaching children about their shared heritage. Artists drew inspiration from Valen designs, creating works that blended elements of both cultures. Even language evolved, with phrases and idioms borrowed from the Valens entering everyday speech. Yet, not everything was harmonious. Backlash against the Valens grew in certain circles, fueled by fearmongers and opportunists. Protests erupted in cities around the globe, with demonstrators accusing the aliens of manipulating humanity for their own gain. Conspiracy theories flourished, claiming that the Valens had fabricated their history to exert control. Some even called for severing ties altogether, arguing that humanity should focus on its own problems rather than aligning with outsiders. Despite these challenges, Ethan and Claire remained steadfast in their mission. They traveled extensively, speaking at conferences, schools, and community events to promote understanding and cooperation. Their message was simple, yet powerful. Humanity's future depended on embracing its connection to the Valens and learning from their example. One day, while visiting a school in New York City, Ethan was approached by a young girl named Lily. Her wide eyes sparkled with curiosity as she asked, "Do you think we can really change, like the Valens did?" Ethan knelt down to meet her gaze, smiling. "Gently, I believe we can," he replied, "but it won't be easy. Change never is. What matters is that we try to listen, to learn, and to grow. That's how we honor our shared past and build a better future." Lily nodded thoughtfully, clutching a drawing she had made of Earth and Epsilon 7 side by side. In that moment, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength wasn't its ability to conquer or dominate, but its capacity to adapt, to dream, and to unite. As he walked away, hand in hand with Claire, Ethan glanced up at the sky. Somewhere out there, the Valens watched and waited, their presence a reminder of what humanity could achieve if it dared to believe. In the small, quiet town of Silver Ridge, Oregon, life moved at a slow and predictable pace. The streets were lined with tall pine trees that swayed gently in the breeze, and the air always carried the faint smell of fresh wood and damp earth. After a rainstorm, most people in the town lived simple lives, working ordinary jobs, raising families, and enjoying evenings filled with laughter and warmth. But for Ethan Cole, life was anything but ordinary. Ethan was an astrophysicist, a man whose mind often wandered far beyond the limits of Earth, while others found comfort in the familiar rhythms of daily life. Ethan spent his days and many of his nights searching for answers to questions that had fascinated humanity for centuries. Are we alone? Is there life out there? Ethan worked at the local observatory, a modest building perched on a hill just outside of town. It wasn't much to look at from the outside, a plain brick structure with a large dome on top, but inside, it housed some of the most advanced equipment available for someone in his field. Every evening, Ethan would climb the narrow staircase to the control room, where rows of computers and monitors blinked with streams of data. From there, he operated the massive radio telescope mounted on the roof, its dish pointing skyward like a giant ear, listening for whispers from the cosmos. On one particularly cold evening in late November, Ethan sat hunched over his computer screen, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he adjusted settings and analyzed incoming signals. Outside, snow began to fall gently, blanketing the ground in white. Inside the observatory, however, Ethan barely noticed. His focus was fixed entirely on the data streaming in from the telescope. For weeks now, he had been picking up strange signals coming from deep space, signals that didn't match any known natural phenomena like pulsars or quasars. At first he thought it might be interference caused by human activity, such as satellites or military communications. But tonight, something about the signal felt different. The signal was faint, almost drowned out by the cosmic noise surrounding it. Yet, there was a pattern, a repeating sequence of pulses that seemed deliberate. It wasn't random. This wasn't just static or some glitch in the equipment. Someone, or something, was sending a message. Ethan leaned closer to the screen, his heart pounding with excitement. He ran the signal through several filters to isolate it further, trying to determine its source. As he did, the pattern became clearer. The pulses repeated every few seconds, each one precise and consistent. There was no way this could be explained by chance or coincidence. Whatever was creating the signal had done so intentionally. Ethan's mind raced with possibilities. Could this be evidence of intelligent life beyond Earth? Was he witnessing humanity's first contact with an alien civilization? He knew better than to jump to conclusions. Scientists had detected unusual signals before, only to later discover they were nothing more than natural occurrences or technical errors. Still, this one felt special. It was too precise, too structured to be coincidence. Ethan needed another set of eyes on the data, someone who could help make sense of what he was seeing. He reached for his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. "Claire," he said when the call connected. "I think I've found something." Claire Bennett was used to getting calls from Ethan at odd hours. She worked as a linguist and cryptographer, specializing in decoding ancient languages and complex codes. Over the years, she and Ethan had collaborated on several projects, though none quite like this. When Ethan explained what he had discovered, Claire's curiosity was piqued. Within 20 minutes, she arrived at the observatory, bundled up in a thick coat and scarf. "What do you have?" she asked, brushing snowflakes from her hair as she stepped inside. Ethan pointed to the screen. "Look at this. See how the pulses repeat every few seconds? And the intervals there, consistent. Too consistent." Claire pulled up a chair and studied the data carefully. Her brow furrowed as she ran calculations in her head. After a few moments, she nodded slowly. "This isn't natural," she said. "It's artificial. Someone sent this." The realization hit them both at once. If the signal was artificial, then it meant only one thing. Intelligent life existed somewhere out there in the universe. But that wasn't all. As Claire continued to analyze the pattern, she noticed something even more extraordinary. Embedded within the sequence of pulses were mathematical constants: pi, the golden ratio, prime numbers. These weren't just random markers. They were universal signs, designed to catch the attention of anyone listening. "There's more," Claire said. After a while, she highlighted a section of the signal. "These longer bursts, they look like coordinates, directions." Ethan's heart raced. Could it be? Were they being invited to follow the signal to its source? He quickly cross-referenced the numbers with star charts and databases. The coordinates pointed to a distant star system located thousands of light-years away. It would take generations to reach it, using current technology. Still, the implications were staggering. They weren't just looking at proof of extraterrestrial intelligence. They were being given a roadmap. Word of the discovery spread quickly. By morning, news outlets around the world were buzzing with speculation. Was this humanity's first contact with alien life? Governments scrambled to respond, while scientists debated the significance of the signal. Some dismissed it as a hoax, or a misinterpretation of data. Others argued that it was evidence of a breakthrough moment in human history. For Ethan and Claire, however, the excitement was tempered by a sense of responsibility. They had uncovered something monumental, something that could change everything humanity thought it knew about itself. As they stood together in the observatory, watching the sun rise over the snowy landscape, Ethan broke the silence. "What if they're not so different from us?" he mused aloud. Claire glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "We'll find out soon enough," she replied. Over the next few days, Ethan and Claire worked tirelessly to verify their findings. They double-checked every calculation, reviewed every piece of data, and consulted with experts in fields ranging from astronomy to cryptography. The more they learned, the more convinced they became that the signal was genuine. It wasn't just a random burst of energy, or a fluke in the equipment. It was a deliberate attempt to communicate. As word of their discovery spread, the observatory became a hub of activity. Reporters camped outside, eager to get a glimpse of the scientists who had potentially made the greatest discovery in human history. Government officials arrived unannounced, demanding updates and insisting on secrecy. Even representatives from NASA showed up, offering resources and support to help decode the signal further. Despite the chaos, Ethan and Claire remained focused. They knew they were standing on the brink of something incredible, something that could unite humanity in ways no one had ever imagined. But they also knew that the stakes were high. If they mishandled the situation, if they misinterpreted the signal, or revealed too much too soon, they risked sparking panic or misunderstanding on a global scale. One evening, as the two of them sat side by side in the dimly lit control room, Claire turned to Ethan with a serious expression. "Do you realize what this means?" she asked. "If we confirm that these coordinates lead to intelligent life, it changes everything, not just science, but religion, politics, culture, everything." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know," he said, "but isn't that why we do this? To push boundaries? To explore the unknown?" Claire smiled faintly. "Yes, but sometimes the unknown comes with consequences we can't predict." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert on one of the monitors. A new batch of data had arrived, stronger and clearer than before. Ethan and Claire exchanged a glance before diving back into their work. The signal was evolving, growing more complex with each passing hour. It was as if whoever or whatever was sending it was testing them, gauging their ability to understand. As they worked, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not by spies or government agents, but by something far greater. He imagined a civilization light years away, patiently waiting for a response. Were they friendly, hostile, or simply curious, like humans themselves? The questions swirled in his mind, unanswered, but thrilling all the same. By the end of the week, Ethan and Claire had compiled enough evidence to present their findings to a panel of international experts. The meeting took place in a secure facility in Washington, D.C., where representatives from governments, scientific organizations, and religious groups gathered to discuss the implications of the discovery. Tensions ran high as debates erupted over how to proceed. Should they send a reply? If so, what should it say? Who would speak for humanity? Through it all, Ethan and Claire remained steadfast. They believed that the signal represented an opportunity and invitation to connect with a species that might hold answers to humanity's deepest questions. But they also understood the risks. Reaching out could expose Earth to dangers no one could foresee. Staying silent, on the other hand, might mean missing a chance to learn, to grow, to expand humanity's understanding of the universe. As the meeting drew to a close, Ethan stood up to address the room. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled slightly. "This isn't just about us," he said. "It's about our future, about what kind of species we want to be. Do we hide in fear, or do we step forward with hope?" Months passed after the discovery of the mysterious signal from deep space. The world had been thrown into a whirlwind of excitement, fear, and speculation. Governments debated how to respond. Scientists worked tirelessly to decode more of the message, and ordinary people looked up at the stars with a mix of wonder and unease. Among all this chaos, Ethan Cole and Claire Bennett continued their work at the observatory in Silver Ridge, Oregon. They were determined to uncover as much as they could about the beings behind the signal. Finally, the decision was made. Humanity would send a reply. It wasn't an easy choice. Many feared that revealing Earth's location could invite danger, but most agreed it was worth the risk. After all, If these aliens had gone through the trouble of sending such a clear and deliberate message, they likely intended no harm. At least, that was the hope. The reply was crafted carefully. A blend of mathematics, images, and sounds designed to convey humanity's existence, culture, and peaceful intentions. Once the message was sent, there was nothing left to do but wait. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Just when some began to doubt whether the aliens would respond, another signal arrived. This time, it was stronger, clearer, and unmistakably directed at Earth. Embedded within it was a new set of coordinates, closer than the original ones. It seemed the aliens wanted to meet. News of the updated coordinates spread like wildfire. Scientists and engineers scrambled to prepare for what came next. A mission to make contact. A team of astronauts, researchers, and diplomats was assembled, led by Commander Daniel Hayes, a seasoned astronaut known for his calm demeanor under pressure. Ethan and Claire were invited to join the mission, representing the two fields most crucial to understanding the aliens' astrophysics and linguistics. The spacecraft chosen for the journey was called Odyssey 1, a sleek state-of-the-art vessel equipped with advanced propulsion systems and cutting-edge communication technology. Before departure, the crew underwent rigorous training, preparing for every possible scenario. Despite their preparation, however, nothing could have fully prepared them for what lay ahead. After months of travel through the vast emptiness of space, Odyssey 1 approached its destination, a planet orbiting a star designated as Epsilon. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, the crew gazed out the windows in awe. The planet below looked remarkably similar to Earth, with sprawling oceans, lush forests, and towering mountain ranges. It was beautiful, almost hauntingly familiar. When they landed, the first thing they noticed was the air. It smelled clean, fresh, like a crisp autumn morning back home. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's, but not enough to cause discomfort. Stepping onto the surface, the crew members exchanged nervous glances. They were ready for anything, or so they thought. It didn't take long for the aliens to appear. Emerging from the trees was a group of beings who looked human, not vaguely humanoid, not alien with slight similarities to humans, but completely and utterly human. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, expressive faces, and even clothing styles that wouldn't look out of place on Earth, if not for the strange symbols embroidered on their tunics and the slight shimmer of their skin under the sunlight. The crew might have mistaken them for fellow humans. A woman stepped forward, her presence commanding yet gentle. She introduced herself as Erin, speaking perfect English with a soft, melodic accent. "We've been waiting for you," she said with a warm smile, her eyes reflecting both curiosity and kindness. Shock rippled through the crew. How was this possible? How could these beings look exactly like them? Commander Hayes recovered quickly, stepping forward to greet Erin, on behalf of humanity. "I thank you for welcoming us," he said, his voice steady, despite the turmoil inside. "We're honored to finally meet you." Erin gestured for the crew to follow her, leading them toward a nearby settlement. As they walked, the crew couldn't help but marvel at their surroundings. The buildings were elegant and functional, blending seamlessly with nature. Solar panels and wind turbines dotted the landscape, powering the community without leaving a trace of pollution. Gardens overflowed with vibrant flowers and crops, tended to by individuals who moved with purpose and harmony. Ethan and Claire exchanged glances, their minds racing with questions. These aliens, these Valens, as Erin referred to them, were clearly advanced, yet their way of life seemed rooted in simplicity and sustainability. There was none of the cold, mechanical sterility often imagined in depictions of alien civilizations. Instead, everything exuded warmth and balance. Once they reached the heart of the settlement, Erin invited the crew to sit around a large circular table. Food and drink were brought out, though the crew hesitated before eating. Were these offerings safe? Sensing their hesitation, Erin assured them, You need not fear. We are not so different from you. The meal broke the ice, allowing conversations to flow more freely. The crew learned that the Valens had been monitoring Earth for centuries, fascinated by humanity's creativity and resilience. However, they had chosen to remain silent until now, believing that humanity needed time to mature before making contact. Your species has great potential, Erin explained, but also great challenges. We hoped that by reaching out, we could guide you toward a brighter path. Her words struck a chord with everyone present. Humanity's struggles with war, inequality, and environmental destruction were well known. To hear an alien civilization acknowledge those flaws and offer guidance was humbling. As the hours passed, Ethan and Claire found themselves drawn into deeper discussions with Erin and other Valen leaders. They shared knowledge of science, philosophy, and art, finding surprising common ground despite their differences. For instance, the Valens revered storytelling as a cornerstone of their culture, much like humans did. Their myths and legends spoke of unity and interconnectedness, themes that resonated deeply with the crew. But amidst the camaraderie, doubts lingered. Why did the Valens look so human? Was it mere coincidence, or was there something more profound at play? Ethan voiced this question during one of their talks. Erin's expression grew thoughtful, and for a moment, she seemed reluctant to answer. Our histories are intertwined, she admitted finally. Long ago, our ancestors came from the same place as yours, a distant world, now lost to time. The revelation stunned the crew. Could it be true? Had humanity and the Valens once shared a common origin? If so, what had driven them apart? And why had the Valens evolved to embrace peace and sustainability, while humanity remained divided and destructive? These questions weighed heavily on Ethan and Claire as they retired to their quarters that night. Lying awake, Ethan stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. Everything he had believed about the universe and humanity's place in it was being challenged. He thought about Earth, about the wars and conflicts that had plagued humanity for millennia. What lessons could the Valens teach them? Could humanity truly change, or was it doomed to repeat its mistakes? The next day, the crew explored more of the settlement, accompanied by Valen guides. They visited schools where children laughed and played, hospitals where advanced medical technology healed patients swiftly, and workshops where artisans crafted tools and instruments with precision. Everywhere they went, they saw evidence of a society that valued cooperation over competition, empathy over greed. Yet, not everything was idyllic. During a tour of the outskirts of the settlement, Ethan noticed scars on the land patches of barren soil, remnants of ruined structures, and faded murals depicting scenes of conflict. When he asked about them, his guide hesitated before explaining. Our past was not always peaceful, the guide said quietly. We too once faced division and destruction, but we chose to learn from our mistakes, to rebuild and grow stronger together. This admission gave Ethan pause. It was comforting to know that the Valens weren't perfect, that they too had struggled and overcome adversity. But it also raised concerns. What price had they paid for their progress? And what sacrifices might humanity have to make to follow a similar path? Back on Earth, reactions to the news of the Valens' appearance were mixed. Some celebrated the discovery, seeing it as proof that humanity wasn't alone in the universe. Others viewed the Valens with suspicion, questioning their motives and accusing them of hiding secrets. Conspiracy theories flourished, fueled by politicians and media outlets eager to exploit public fears. Despite the backlash, efforts to foster cooperation between Earth and the Valens continued. Plans were made for cultural exchanges, trade agreements, and joint scientific research. Ethan and Claire returned to Earth briefly to report their findings, only to find themselves thrust into the spotlight. Interviews, press conferences, and debates consumed their days, leaving little time for reflection. Through it all, One truth became increasingly clear. Meeting the Valens had changed everything. Humanity was no longer the center of its own universe. Its flaws were laid bare, its potential magnified. Whether this newfound awareness would lead to growth or further division remained to be seen. As Ethan stood on the balcony of his apartment one evening, gazing up at the stars, he felt a strange mix of hope and uncertainty. As the cultural exchange between Earth and the Valens continued to deepen, Ethan Cole and Claire Bennett found themselves increasingly drawn into the complexities of their shared history. While humanity celebrated the advancements brought by the Valens, lingering questions about their past gnawed at Ethan's mind. The more he learned about the Valens society, the more inconsistencies he noticed, tiny cracks in the polished surface of their seemingly perfect civilization. It started with small things. During one of their visits to Epsilon 7, Ethan overheard a conversation between two Valen elders. They spoke in hushed tones about the old days, referring to a time before their ancestors had settled on the planet. Their words were vague, but there was an unmistakable undertone of sadness and secrecy. When Ethan asked Erin about it later, she dismissed his concerns with a polite smile. "Every society has its scars," she said. "We've moved beyond them." But Ethan wasn't convinced. Something about her response felt rehearsed, almost evasive. He mentioned his suspicions to Claire, who shared his unease. Together, they decided to dig deeper, hoping to uncover the truth behind the Valen's carefully curated image. Their investigation began subtly. At first, they simply observed the Valens' daily lives more closely, paying attention to details that might reveal hidden truths. They noticed that certain areas of the settlement were off-limits to outsiders, guarded by Valens who seemed unusually vigilant. Ancient ruins scattered across the landscape bore signs of deliberate neglect, as if the Valens wanted to erase reminders of their past. Even the glowing crystals in the underground archive of ones, containing centuries of knowledge, seemed incomplete, as though key pieces of information had been deliberately omitted. Ethan and Claire realized they needed access to restricted areas if they were going to find answers. One night, under the cover of darkness, they ventured into a part of the settlement marked as forbidden. The streets were eerily quiet, the only sound, the soft crunch of their boots on gravel. As they approached a large building surrounded by high walls, Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This was risky not just for them, but for the fragile alliance between Earth and the Valens. If they were caught, it could shatter the trust they had worked so hard to build. Inside the building, they discovered what appeared to be an abandoned museum. Dust-covered exhibits displayed artifacts from another era, weapons, shattered statues, and fragments of scorched manuscripts. A mural on one wall depicted scenes of destruction cities, engulfed in flames, people fleeing in terror. Beneath the images, a single phrase was etched in faded letters: "The Great Collapse." Claire pulled out her tablet and began documenting everything, her hands trembling slightly. "This isn't just about Solara Prime," she whispered. "Whatever happened here, it's recent. Much more recent than they've admitted." Ethan nodded grimly. Erin said, "They fled their original planet because of war. But this looks like they brought the war with them." They continued exploring, their flashlights casting long shadows on the walls. In a back room, they found a locked vault. Using tools provided by the crew of Odyssey 1, they managed to pry it open. Inside were stacks of documents and data crystals, far older than the ones in the official archive. Ethan inserted one of the crystals into his device, and a flood of images and text filled the screen. What they saw shocked them to their core. The files detailed a catastrophic event that had occurred thousands of years ago, but not on Solara Prime. It had happened right here, on Epsilon 7. The Valens hadn't arrived as peaceful settlers. They had come as refugees, fleeing environmental collapse caused by their own actions. Their original planet had been ravaged by unchecked industrialization, pollution, and resource depletion. Desperate to survive, They had fled to Epsilon, hoping to start anew, but their arrival had disrupted the delicate balance of the planet's ecosystem, leading to widespread devastation. The documents revealed that the Valens had attempted to rebuild their society using sustainable practices. But the damage was already done. Entire species had gone extinct, and vast regions of the planet had become uninhabitable. Faced with starvation and conflict, the Valens had turned on each other, igniting a brutal civil war that nearly wiped them out. Only through immense sacrifice and collective effort had they managed to restore some semblance of order. Ethan and Claire sat in stunned silence, the weight of the discovery pressing down on them. The Valens weren't just survivors of a distant tragedy, they were perpetrators of one. Their history mirrored humanity's darkest fears, a cycle of greed, destruction, and regret. And yet, they had somehow broken free of that cycle, rebuilding their world and forging a new path forward. "We can't keep this to ourselves," Claire said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Humanity needs to know. If we're making the same mistakes they did, we have to stop before it's too late." Ethan hesitated. "If we tell anyone, it could destroy everything we've built. People are already scared of the Valens. If they find out about this, it'll confirm their worst suspicions." "But isn't that better than lying to them?" Claire countered. "We owe it to humanity to be honest. Maybe knowing the truth will push us to change faster." After a long pause, Ethan nodded reluctantly. "You're right. We can't hide this. But we need to think carefully about how we share it." Returning to Earth, Ethan and Chronicles presented their findings to Commander Daniel Hayes and a select group of scientists and policymakers. The room fell silent as the evidence was laid out before them. Maps showed the extent of environmental damage on Epsilon 7, while timelines traced the Valens' descent into chaos and eventual recovery. For a moment, no one spoke. Finally, Commander Hayes broke the silence. "This changes everything," he said gravely. "If we don't act now, we're heading down the same road." The decision was made to release the information gradually, framing it not as an accusation against the Valens, but as a warning to humanity. Public statements emphasized the parallels between Earth's current trajectory and the Valens' past, urging immediate action to address climate change, resource management, and social inequality. Scientists and activists seized on the revelation, using it to galvanize support for sweeping reforms. Predictably, reactions were mixed. Some embraced the message, seeing it as a wake-up call. Grassroots movements sprang up around the world, demanding policy changes and holding governments accountable. Others, however, reacted with anger and denial. Critics accused Ethan and Claire of betraying the Valens' trust, while conspiracy theorists claimed the entire story was fabricated to manipulate public opinion. Amid the backlash, Erin summoned Ethan and Claire to Epsilon 7. When they arrived, her expression was unreadable. "I knew you would find out eventually," she said quietly. "I hoped you wouldn't, but I understand why you did." Ethan stepped forward, guilt heavy in his chest. "Erin, we didn't mean to betray you. We thought you were doing what was best for your people." She interrupted, her tone neither accusatory nor forgiving. "And perhaps you were, but you must understand the risk you've taken. Trust is fragile, especially when it comes to truths that hurt." Claire looked at her earnestly. "We didn't want to hurt anyone. We just wanted to help humanity avoid the same mistakes." Erin sighed deeply, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. "Maybe this is what we need. A reminder that we are not so different after all. That even those who have walked the path of redemption still carry the weight of their sins." Over the following weeks, tensions simmered between Earth and the Valens. While many humans admired the Valens' resilience and determination to rebuild, others viewed them with renewed suspicion. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, with demonstrators calling for stricter limits on collaboration. Some even demanded the expulsion of Valen representatives from Earth. Through it all, Ethan and Claire worked tirelessly to mend the rift. They traveled extensively, meeting with leaders and citizens alike, to explain their intentions and emphasize the importance of unity. Slowly, the tide began to turn. People started to see the Valens not as flawless saviors, but as flawed lesbians who had faced their demons and emerged stronger for it. One evening, as Ethan stood on a hill overlooking Silver Ridge, he reflected on the journey they had undertaken. Humanity and the Valens were bound together by more than shared DNA. They were united by their struggles, their failures, and their hopes for a better future. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges and sacrifices, but for the first time, Ethan allowed himself to believe that change was possible. Humanity chose to embrace it. Beside him, Claire smiled faintly. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked. Ethan glanced at her, then back at the stars, twinkling faintly in the night sky. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I do know one thing. We have to try." The cultural exchange between Earth and the Valens deepened as weeks turned into months. What began as cautious curiosity evolved into a vibrant partnership, with both species learning from each other in ways no one had anticipated. For humanity, the Valens offered not just advanced technology but also lessons in sustainability, cooperation, and empathy. In return, the Valens marveled at Earth's diversity's multitude of languages, traditions, and artistic expressions. Ethan Cole and Claire Bennett played key roles in facilitating these exchanges. They spent much of their time traveling between Earth and Epsilon 7, acting as liaisons between the two worlds. Their days were filled with meetings, presentations, and discussions aimed at bridging gaps and fostering mutual understanding. Despite the challenges, they found joy in witnessing the growing bond between humans and Valens. It was as if an invisible wall had been torn down, allowing two long-separated branches of the same family tree to reconnect. One of the most remarkable aspects of the exchange was the sharing of knowledge. Scientists from both species worked side by side in laboratories, combining their expertise to tackle problems that had once seemed insurmountable. The Valens introduced breakthroughs in renewable energy, medical treatments, and agricultural practices that could revolutionize life on Earth. Solar panels became more efficient, capable of powering entire cities with minimal resources. Cures for diseases thought incurable emerged, thanks to Valen advancements in genetic engineering. Farmers adopted techniques that increased crop yields while preserving soil health, ensuring food security for generations to come. But it wasn't just science that benefited. Artists, musicians, and writers drew inspiration from the Valens' creative expressions, blending them with human traditions to create something entirely new. A symphony composed jointly by a human conductor and a Valen musician premiered in New York City, captivating audiences with its fusion of classical orchestration and ethereal harmonies. Painters experimented with pigments derived from plants native to Epsilon 7, producing colors never seen before on Earth. Writers collaborated on novels that explored themes of unity, resilience, and shared destiny, weaving together stories from both cultures. Schools around the world eagerly incorporated lessons about the Valens into their curricula. Children learned about the history of Solara Prime, the planet that had once been home to their common ancestors. Teachers emphasized the importance of learning from the past to avoid repeating mistakes. Students participated in projects designed to promote environmental stewardship and global cooperation. Inspired by the Valens' commitment to living in harmony with nature. Yet, not everyone embraced the cultural exchange with open arms. Backlash grew louder in certain parts of the world, particularly among those who felt threatened by the rapid changes sweeping across society. Politicians and media personalities seized on fears of losing national identity or economic independence, painting the Valens as outsiders intent on undermining Earth's sovereignty. Protests erupted in major cities, with demonstrators holding signs that read "Earth First" and "No to Alien Influence." Some even called for the immediate cessation of all contact with the Valens. The tension reached a boiling point when a group of extremists attempted to sabotage a joint research facility in Geneva. Though no one was harmed, the attack sent shockwaves through both communities. Security measures were tightened, and debates raged over whether humanity should continue engaging with the Valens or retreat into isolation. Amidst the chaos, Ethan and Claire found themselves caught in the middle. They were hailed as heroes by some and vilified by others. Critics accused them of prioritizing alien interests over human welfare, while supporters praised their efforts to unite the two species. The pressure weighed heavily on them, testing their resolve and their friendship. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of interviews and public appearances, Ethan and Claire sat together in a quiet cafe in Paris. Outside, rain drizzled against the windows, casting a soft glow over the cobblestone streets. Inside, the air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries. Neither spoke for a long time, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Claire broke the silence. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing the right thing?" she asked softly, stirring her cup absent-mindedly. "All this progress, it feels like. We're moving forward, but at what cost?" Ethan sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I think about it all the time," he admitted. "Every step we take brings us closer to understanding each other, but it also exposes cracks we didn't know existed. Fear isn't easy to overcome." Claire nodded, her expression thoughtful. "People are scared because they don't understand. To them, the Valens represent change, and change is terrifying when you feel like you're losing control. But we can't stop now," Ethan said firmly. "If we do, we risk throwing away everything we've gained. The Valens aren't perfect. They've made mistakes too, but they've shown us what's possible when we work together. That's worth fighting for." His words resonated with Claire, though doubt still lingered in her mind. She glanced out the window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass. "Maybe we need to focus less on convincing people and more on showing them," she suggested. "Actions speak louder than words, right? Let's give them something tangible to believe in." Inspired by her insight, Ethan and Claire devised a plan to launch a series of community-driven initiatives aimed at demonstrating the benefits of collaboration. They partnered with local leaders, educators, and activists to organize events that brought humans and Valens together in meaningful ways. Workshops taught sustainable farming techniques using Valen methods. Art festivals showcased collaborative creations that celebrated the beauty of diversity. Health fairs provided free screenings using cutting-edge Valen diagnostic tools, saving lives and building trust. These efforts began to shift public opinion, albeit slowly. People who had initially resisted the idea of working with the Valens started to see the tangible impact of their contributions. Farmers reported higher yields and healthier crops. Patients expressed gratitude for treatments that had restored their quality of life. Families attended festivals where children danced alongside Valen performers, laughing and smiling without a trace of fear. Even so, resistance persisted. Extremist groups continued to spread misinformation, exploiting fears to rally support for their cause. One such group, calling itself the Human Sovereignty Movement, gained significant traction online, attracting followers disillusioned by the pace of change. Their rhetoric grew increasingly hostile, accusing the Valens of harboring secret agendas and plotting to dominate Earth. The movement's leader, a charismatic politician named Rachel Monroe, became a polarizing figure. Her speeches, delivered with fiery passion, struck a chord with many who felt left behind by globalization and technological advancement. "We must protect our way of life," she declared during a televised rally. "The Valens may look like us, but they are not us. We cannot allow ourselves to be swallowed by their influence." Her words resonated with millions, sparking protests and counter-protests across the globe. Cities became battlegrounds for competing ideologies, with clashes often turning violent. Governments struggled to maintain order, torn between appeasing dissenters and supporting the alliance with the Valens. Against this backdrop of unrest, Ethan and Claire faced mounting pressure to take sides. Some urged them to condemn the extremists publicly, while others begged them to remain neutral. Erin, too, weighed in, cautioning against escalating tensions further. Fear feeds on division, she told them during a private meeting. Your role is to bridge, not to inflame. Trust that the truth will prevail in time. Taking her advice to heart, Ethan and Claire focused on fostering dialogue rather than confrontation. They organized town hall meetings where citizens could voice their concerns directly to Valen representatives. These gatherings weren't always peaceful. Arguments often erupted, and tempers flared, but they created opportunities for honest conversation. Over time, small breakthroughs occurred. A farmer who had initially opposed adopting Valen farming techniques admitted that his crop yields had doubled since making the switch. A doctor skeptical of alien medicine thanked a Valen colleague for saving a patient's life. These moments of connection, though seemingly minor, added up. Slowly but surely, walls began to crumble. Suspicion gave way to curiosity, hostility to respect. Even Rachel Monroe's influence waned, as more people rejected her divisive rhetoric in favor of unity. As winter approached, Ethan and Claire returned to Silver Ridge for a brief respite. The small town remained largely untouched by the turmoil, gripping larger cities, its quiet charm offering a welcome escape. Walking along familiar trails blanketed in snow, they reflected on how far they had come and how much farther they still had to go. We've planted seeds, Claire said as they paused near a frozen stream. It'll take time for them to grow, but I think we've laid the groundwork for something real. Ethan smiled, his breath visible in the crisp air. Something worth fighting for, he echoed. And maybe, just maybe, we'll leave the world a little better than we found it. Above them, the stars twinkled faintly through the clouds, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the fragile yet profound